It's that time of year again. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences emphatically decides which film is the best picture of the year. An annual tradition that seems almost necessary given our society's infatuation with superheroes and space battles. So, it's nice to know that we give a second look to those expertly crafted films with more unique stories, topical themes, and meaningful messages. The only problem here is, of the 5,000 or so members of the Academy, most are white, male, and over the age of 60. I suppose that's okay if we want to know Grandpa's favorite movie, but that certainly doesn't bode well for any movie featuring a woman, person of color, or even a foreign language. Now, I don't think it's as bad as everyone thinks. I'm pretty sure we don't have a group of old men sitting around a long table, finger tenting and laughing malevolently at the predominantly white Oscar picks they're imparting on the masses this year. Hey, I mean, even the Academy has assured us that all future membership invitations would better represent the demographics of a modern film-going audience, and introduced an initiative back in 2016 to double the amount of women and people of color by 2020. So what does that even mean? Who the hell knows? For all we know, we have 6 women now instead of 3, and 2 people of color instead of 1. Now, I'm fully aware that I'm neither a woman or a person of color, but I am an avid movie watcher. And yes, I do watch movies that are beyond the odd and unique ones that have dominated my movie reviews thus far. And I should probably point out that one of my goals in recent years was to watch each and every Oscar-nominated film from 1927 all the way up until present day. While I'll freely admit I haven't watched all 571 nominees, I have watched over half, and this includes each and every nominee extending back to 1996. Overall, that's 94 years of cinema right there, and a whole lot of movie watching, let me tell you. So, I don't think I'm overstepping when I say there are quite a few gems in the list, but also a few stinkers as well. So, in this Oscar Spectacular edition of Movie Reviews with Treso, I am not going to review one film, but 9. And this includes all 8 Best Picture nominees, along with one film that was surprisingly ignored. I'm not going to lie, this is going to be a long one, so you might want to crack open a few cold ones before you join me for this Oscar Spectacular from the Great White North. The movies might be good or bad, but at least the reviews will be beauty. Now, where to start? I suppose the most conventional way of going through each review would be to start in alphabetical order. But I think that would give the impression that each film is a winner just because it was nominated. Well, that's not the way that I do things. I'm ranking these films from number 9 all the way to number 1. That's right. There's going to be some winners and there's going to be some losers after we're done with this one, let me tell you. So, without further delay, the film that found its way into the dreaded number 9 slot is none other than Judas and the Black Messiah. Judas and the Black Messiah is a biographical drama set during the civil rights movement of the late 1960s, much like another nominee on this list, The Trial of the Chicago 7. Although both films share a common backdrop, Judas and the Black Messiah focuses primarily on the rise of Fred Hampton. chairman of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party, and his betrayal at the hands of William O'Neill, an FBI informant with a crisis of conscience. The Black Panther Party is a controversial political organization and a polarizing one to say the least. While I don't necessarily agree with how the film downplays the violent measures of the Black Panthers, or how 21-year-old Fred Hampton is portrayed as an infallible hero, that's not really the heart of the story. The internal struggle of William O'Neill is the main focus. A man caught between a cause he wholeheartedly believes in and the FBI, who has the power to take away his freedom. While the performances of Lakeith Stanfield and Daniel Kaluuya are noteworthy and the story told is fairly engaging, the movie itself is just okay. Having watched this film immediately after the trial of the Chicago 7, I fully expected there to be more of a commentary on the civil rights movement of 1960s United States, which just ends up taking a backseat to our characters of O'Neill and Hampton. I will say it seems unfair that any mention of this film seems to draw comparisons to the trial of the Chicago 7 due to identical settings, similar themes, and story overlap. Of all the reviews I've read, there seems to be more debate over whether Judas and the Black Messiah is a better film than the trial of the Chicago 7, and not enough talk about whether it deserves to be recognized as the best picture of the year. Like I said before, this film is just okay. And when compared to the rest of the Best Picture nominees, okay gets you the bottom spot in my list. Unfortunate, but that's the way she goes. Now, I don't think it should come as any surprise that The Trial of the Chicago 7 is the next film on my list at number 8. With regards to setting, social climate, and overall tone, The Trial of the Chicago 7 and Judas and the Black Messiah are very comparable films. Like I stated before, both films are set in the late 1960s. The plight of political and social change weigh heavy on our characters, and there's an overwhelming sense of unease and tension throughout. While Judas and the Black Messiah focuses on one man's internal struggle of betrayal, The Trial of the Chicago 7 deals with an even larger struggle. One that positions protesters opposed to the Vietnam War against a government more than willing to try and silence their cause. The film follows the Chicago 7, a group of anti-Vietnam protesters charged with conspiracy and crossing state lines with the intention of inciting riots at the 1968 Democratic National Convention and the infamous sham trial that took place afterwards. The film is another courtroom drama that we've seen time and time again, but the social and political commentary on the right to protest is incredibly relevant today, given the Black Lives Matter movement and the trials and tribulations associated with the 2020 US presidential election. It's no doubt that writer and director Aaron Sorkin drew inspiration from today's headlines, along with his previous work on the political drama series The West Wing and 1993's courtroom drama A Few Good Men. Sorkin puts together a competent and relatable film, so why do I have it ranked so low on my list? Well, the issue for me is how Aaron Sorkin's characters interact, and it's an issue brought up by the character Holden Caulfield in the novel Catcher in the Rye. The actors are good, but almost too good. When one of them finishes a speech, another actor is ready to say something almost immediately to give the impression that they're really arguing and they're really interrupting each other. Bottom line is, it feels weird and it takes you out of the film in moments. Unfortunately, those character interactions are like a pebble in your shoe. Not jarring enough to quit watching, but just annoying enough that you know it's there. That being said, provided that you don't share some of the same sentiments that I have about Aaron Sorkin's directing style, you should have a decent enough time with this one. Moving on back to the top 9, Mank is the number 7 film on my list, and for good reason. While the film is probably the most well-made in terms of categories like direction, acting, and cinematography, it's anything but relevant. The film is a biographical drama about an alcoholic screenwriter, Herman J. Mankiewicz, and his development of the screenplay for the classic film Citizen Kane, which was released to the audiences all the way back in 1941. I know I've poked fun at the Academy for being dusty old mummies, but Citizen Kane is even older than that. I mean, to put this in perspective, all those people recalling fond memories of going down to their local theater and watching Citizen Kane are probably over 90 years old. Hell, Betty White would have first watched this film when she was 19. Now, some might say that Citizen Kane was revolutionary, introducing audiences to film techniques that have had a significant impact on the films we watch today. Sure, Citizen Kane might have been revolutionary for its time, but had it been released today, it ain't blowing anybody's skirt up, let me tell you. So, when we are talking about the Academy wanting to appeal to more modern film-going audiences, this is definitely not it. I mean, the audiences that this film appeals to likely have one foot in the grave. Now, I'm not going to poke too much fun, as this film was written by the late father of the director, David Fincher. The screenplay was completed prior to his father's death in 2003, but never really come to fruition due to Fincher's insistence on shooting in black and white. It's fairly obvious that the film is an homage to his dad, and David Fincher is able to bring closure to a passion project him and his dad set out to make 20 years ago. Touching? Sure, but that doesn't immediately make it the best film on the list. As you can probably tell, I'm pretty lukewarm about this one. Sure, we have an expertly crafted film by an experienced director, coupled with excellent performances, beautiful cinematography, and a noteworthy score. Unfortunately, the story itself is boring, and it's pretty out of touch. And those are the main reasons why Mank finds itself in the number 7 spot. And the film taking the number 6 spot is Promising Young Woman. The film is a black comedy thriller directed by Emerald Fennell, her first feature-length film. Hey, not too shabby for an initial debut. Now, out of all the nominees, this one probably surprised me the most, because it was not only super entertaining, but it took the story in a direction I didn't think it was going to take. The film stars Carey Mulligan as Cassie Thomas, a 30-year-old medical school dropout who seeks to avenge the death of her best friend, who was a victim of sexual assault. My first impressions of the trailer were, oh boy, here comes a 2-hour revenge porn movie made for women. Now, I immediately equated this movie to a film like 2014's John Wick, where the main character is wronged and spends the entirety of the film hunting down those who have wronged him. No real consequences for our protagonist, no real character arc, and no real lessons learned. Given the subject matter of this film, I'll freely admit it probably wouldn't have made it on any of my watch lists had it not been nominated for Best Picture. But after watching the film, I can say that it was pretty darn good. Yeah, Promising Young Woman definitely delivers on the revenge porn it touts in its trailer, and our main character Cassie is able to exact retribution against those who have wronged her, along with a couple of club-going sleazeballs for good measure. But I will also add that the film successfully explores the negative consequences associated with taking the law into your own hands and how vigilante actions can utterly deteriorate all the healthy relationships in your life. While this film is not a typical Best Picture nominee, the subject matter is pretty topical, and it's conveyed in an entertaining and colorful way. Now, we know that the Academy was looking to pick films that identified with the modern film-going audience, and guess what? This is one of those films. Good pick, crusty old men of the Academy. Good pick. Oh, Promising Young Woman is an easy recommendation if you're on the hunt for something good to watch, and I think it's pretty well deserving of any accolades it garners this awards season. Nomad Land comes in at my number 5 spot. You know those movies that leave you feeling happy? The ones whose trailers proclaim it the feel-good movie of the year? The ones that you can curl up in your pajamas and watch in bed after a hard day? Yeah, Nomad Land is not one of those movies. The film follows a middle-aged widow named Fern, played by Frances McDormand, who loses everything and is forced to cram all of her belongings into a used van following the economic collapse of a company town in rural Nevada. Now, this film probably carried my highest expectations out of all the nominees, primarily because Frances McDormand is a fantastic actress, giving us standout performances throughout her career, from 1996's Fargo all the way to 2017's 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I fully expected Nomad Land to be no different from these previous films, providing us with a story about one woman's indomitable spirit and her resilience through injustice and hardship. While that may be true, I did not expect our main character to be a dispassionate rock of a woman, not capable of settling down, not capable of falling in love. Hell, not even capable of making friends or having a good time. In the context of the film, it makes perfect sense. The loss of a husband, job, and seemingly everything material has created an emotionally distant and shut-off character. But that's pretty depressing to say the least. Given that this character is central to the film, I'm pretty sure the Academy's modern film-going audiences aren't going to have a very good time with this one. Sure, we can say that Nomad Land is not about the good times. It's about survival and being able to endure life's challenges no matter how unfair or seemingly insurmountable. Given that story and those themes, Nomad Land might be one of the more relevant films on this list, given the personal hardships we've all had to face this past year. I'd like to think, though, that audiences are looking for a film to inspire hope, something to give you that feeling that things are about to get better, and Nomad Land just really doesn't deliver on that message. The message here is that in tough times, we can only really rely on our ability to keep moving forward, and there are no promises in life. Whew. Honest message, but that's a message that leaves you feeling absolutely dejected by the end of the film. So yeah, Nomad Land bummed me out, and it's probably the reason why it found itself all the way back in my number 5 spot. Sound of Metal edges out Nomad Land for the number 4 spot on my list. Similar to Nomad Land, this film is about dealing with adversity and coming to grips with changes in one's life. But it also focuses on the high cost of denial and self-deception in the face of hard truths. Sound of Metal follows a heavy metal drummer named Reuben Stone, played by Riz Ahmed. who in the beginning is content traveling from gig to gig and playing shows with his girlfriend Lou. When Ruben suddenly loses his hearing, not only is the band in jeopardy, but Lou becomes increasingly concerned about Ruben's sobriety, given that he is a recovering drug addict. It's not long before Ruben concedes that he needs to address his hearing loss and reluctantly agrees to accept help from a rural shelter for deaf recovering addicts. Similar to the addicts in his program, Ruben's primary addiction becomes one centered around hearing again, which he sees as the only obstacle in the way of playing music again and reuniting with his girlfriend. His journey is one of acceptance, the struggle of coming to terms with a disability, and the difficulty of letting go of a previous existence, one defined by a world of sound. Now, Ruben's character arc and a standout performance by Riz Ahmed are definite highlights of the film. However, I would be absolutely remiss if I did not compliment the sound direction in this one. From the pounding heavy metal music and the muffled reality of losing one's hearing, to the sense of peace in the moments of silence, the level of detail is absolutely phenomenal. While I don't want to make too many predictions about which film will win each category, I will say it will be an absolute shame if Sound of Metal does not walk away with the Academy Award for Best Sound. I mean, it was head and heels above all other nominees. I know, I only have this film in my number 4 spot, but I do highly recommend taking the time to watch this one. You'll be glad you did. When initially looking at my list, you probably thought to yourself, why are there 9 films being reviewed here today? There are only 8 Best Picture nominees in the list. Hey Treso, are you trying to sneak a goofy one in there to try to stray away from the fact that the rest of the nominees are pretty much devoid of any humor? Well, kind of. While the film I selected in my number 3 spot is indeed a comedy drama, and much lighter in tone than the rest of the nominees, I found it very odd that this film was not nominated for Best Picture, and that's primarily because it was nominated for Best Director. Well, you might think that that's not a very good reason to include this film in my list, but let me remind you, in the history of the Academy Awards, of the 92 films that have won Best Picture, 66 of those were also awarded Best Director. The categories of Best Picture and Best Director without a doubt go hand in hand. I mean, by definition, won't the Best Director also have the Best Picture? Good question. To try and determine the subtle differences between the two categories would be completely speculative and by no means definitive. I'm not here to try to give insight into the selection process of an aged academy, but rather give you insight into the films deemed Best of the Year and whether or not those films are worth the watch. So I decided to call an audible, so to speak, and add the Danish film Another Round to my list in the number 3 spot. Another Round follows 4 teachers, all of whom struggle with unmotivated students and feel as though their lives are becoming boring and stale. The group discusses a theory that having a blood alcohol content of 0.05 will make you more creative and more relaxed. One of the group becomes inspired and starts to drink at work, seemingly changing his life around. Witnessing only the positive changes, the rest of the group decides to join in. So this film is essentially about teachers getting drunk, which in the beginning is wildly fun and entertaining. But as the film progresses, their dependence on alcohol becomes greater, and increasingly negative consequences begin to manifest themselves in their teaching as well as their lives at home. On the surface, the message of this film appears to be one about the consequences of drinking to excess. However, in reality, it's about a group of men longing for youth, along with the love, hope, and vitality that has somehow eluded them over the years. Drinking just seems to act as an initial catalyst, showing us that we have the ability to enact positive changes in our life, even though that life may seem to be boring, predictable, and unchanging. Our teachers just incorrectly assume that drinking is the only way to achieve that positive change, a lesson that they learn over the course of the film. Another Round is a truly exceptional film, and one that's a touch more thought-provoking than it leads on. I thoroughly enjoyed this film, despite it being entirely spoken in Danish. So good that I had to add it to the list of Best Picture nominees, even though it wasn't even nominated. If that isn't a glowing recommendation, I don't know what is. In at number 2 is The Father. Now, I didn't think it would be that close of a race when it came to deciding which of the nominees that I enjoyed the most, but surprise, surprise, I was wrong. Of the 9 films showcased on this list, this was the last film that I watched, primarily because it wasn't offered on streaming services until very recently. Also, I didn't take much notice of the premise, only really recognizing the major players in this one: Anthony Hopkins and Olivia Coleman. In the beginning of this film, the father-daughter relationship portrayed by Hopkins and Coleman seem like any other, and the initial issues brought up seem rather inconsequential. The character of Anthony is stubborn, set in his ways, and content with carrying on like he always has, while his daughter Anne is both dutiful and caring, looking to help her father maintain his way of life, but also looking to distance herself as his primary support person. A misplaced watch and quarrels with a recently hired care worker seem rather innocent, but this is quickly dispelled as our settings begin to seamlessly change without warning, and our characters start appearing as completely different people. It's not long before our audience comes to the conclusion that the perception of our main character is no longer reliable. The lines between reality and a fractured memory are blurred, escalating more and more as the film progresses. By the end of the film, seemingly inconsequential dialogue and scenes have become part of a jumbled jigsaw puzzle, and the audience becomes fully aware of what actually is at play. A man quickly losing his battle with dementia. Now, if you can't already tell, I thoroughly enjoyed this film. Heck, I'll even admit, I got pretty teary-eyed by the end of this one. Seems almost fitting considering I started this whole thing off making fun of the Academy in their old age, and one of the films I was drawn to the most was one about a man's struggle with his memory. Now, at face value, I'll admit that doesn't seem all that enjoyable or even that entertaining, but top-notch performances from Hopkins and Coleman, coupled with a unique storytelling structure, make it one of the best films you'll watch all year. As you probably guessed by now, the film taking the top spot on my list is none other than Minari. Minari is an absolutely wonderful film by relatively unknown director Lee Isaac Chung about a Korean family relocating from California to rural Arkansas to start a farm and chase the elusive American dream. While Minari might not be action-packed or incredibly thought-provoking, it is a deeply personal film complete with drama, heartache, and the odd comedic moments. It is no wonder why this film feels so incredibly real, as director Lee Isaac Chung drew most of his inspiration from his own childhood, growing up on a farm in, you guessed it, rural Arkansas. I feel personally connected to this one, given that my grandparents on my father's side settled in Canada in the 1950s to become farmers and chase the dream for a better life, much like the family shown within this film. Now, my grandparents spoke nothing but Hungarian when they settled in the country, and the physical, emotional, and cultural challenges they faced are definitely depicted within the film. Like I said in the beginning, some of these nominees are gems, and without a question, this one hit me square in the feels. Now, I will add, I do not think these feels could be achieved without incredible acting from the main cast. Stephen Yeun from The Walking Dead plays the optimistic and stubborn father Jacob perfectly, determined to make his new farm work regardless of his limited finances and lack of experience, much to the chagrin of his wife Monica, who is pessimistic about the farm and far more concerned about their son's heart condition. Sprinkle in a kooky grandma with a fondness for Mountain Dew to act as a makeshift babysitter, and you've got a winner on your hands, at least from my perspective. Will this film actually win the award for Best Picture? Well, tough to say. Remember, I'm not one of the crusty old mummies of the Academy making all the decisions. Either way, this movie was well made, had tons of heart, and, most importantly, hit me square in the feels. What else could a movie watcher want? An easy film to put in my number one spot. So there you have it. From worst to first, the 8 Best Picture nominees, along with an honorable mention that probably should have been in the Best Picture chase. These are the films that the Academy has deemed best of the year. So, overall, do I agree with their selections? Well, in my opinion, they still have a long way to go. Sure, this year's film nominees included the internal struggle of a Black Panther, a woman enacting revenge on club-going perverts, and an immigrant family from Korea starting a farm. Yes, these films do better represent the demographics of a modern film-going audience, but they definitely do not represent the wide array of genres recognized today. Judas and the Black Messiah? A drama. Promising Young Woman? A drama. Minari? A drama. With 8 to 10 Best Picture nominees selected each year, it would be nice to consistently see comedy, horror, and animated films selected, rather than just a token film to appease the fans. You know which ones I'm talking about. Get Out, Black Panther, and Jojo Rabbit. These are distinctly different films and not strictly dramas. Having said that, I can't complain too much. This year I have been treated to a diverse group of nominees in terms of subject matter, themes, and tone. I enjoyed watching these films just as much as I did reviewing them. I can only hope that this Oscar spectacular has provided some good insight into each of those nominees, as well as that little extra bit of encouragement to go out there and watch a lesser known film that you might not have watched otherwise. So, get out there, watch a few of these films, and join me next time for Movie Reviews with Treso.